Open Your Eyes is brought to you by the Belize Bank. Our country, your bank.
Welcome to Open Your Eyes.
Start your morning right.
I'm Marlene Cuellar.
I'm Fonseca.
And thank you for joining us this morning on what started as a very foggy day.
Yes.
But
you know what that often means?
That it's going to be hot.
Yeah,
Yeah.
That's what I'm thinking.
Yeah. No, it was really bad. I think I was happy to see that it cleared up in time for people to get to work, because that was definitely going to slow everyone down. Because, visibility, you can even see to the end of the street.
Yeah. It comes at the tail end of a rather damp weekend. Yeah. I'd say wet, but it wasn't like raining that hard, but it was just kind of just constant yesterday. Yeah. And I don't complain. It's good for the plants, right?
Well, yeah, and it was our cold front. I think it's pretty much gone from our area at this point. But
yeah.
What we're going to do is go ahead and read our prepared forecast for today. And so our general situation is for east and northeasterly airflow to dominate our weather.
Our 24-hour forecast calls for sunny skies with a few cloudy periods. Tonight, skies will be cloudy. Shower activity will be isolated during the daytime, and then a few showers will develop mainly along the coast during the night and morning.
Okay, so our winds, they're moving from the east to the northeast at 5 to 15 knots, and that makes for a choppy sea state. And our highs for today are going to be 82 along the coast, 86 inland, and 72 in the hills, while our lows...
Our lows for tonight is going to be 75 degrees along the coast, 68 degrees Fahrenheit inland, and 62 degrees in the hills.
All right, and the extended forecast, we're looking for Tuesday and Tuesday night for showers to develop mainly along coastal areas. And we want to thank our forecaster, Catherine Kammerbach, for that update this morning. All right, so it seems that it's not going to be completely dry as yet.
Well, it's February, so we're expecting this kind of weather before it clears up later on.
Yeah, for the beautiful month.
Yes.
All right, we're going to keep things moving this morning and get into our eye-opener, which means get you some motivation to get your week going. And our eye-opener, taken from dailyom.com, goes like this. Each morning, find a way to start your day right, as it sets the tone for your day. The choices you make upon waking can have a profound impact on your day. If still drowsy, you hit the ground running, rushing to prepare yourself to face your worldly obligations. You will likely feel fatigued and overwhelmed for most of your day. A leisurely and relaxing morning, on the other hand, can energize and excite you, as well as give you the courage to meet the challenges waiting for you. By beginning your day in a focused and centered fashion, you make it your own. You set the tone of your expectations and choose the mood you will use to respond to your circumstances. A gentle, reflective, and thoughtful morning will prepare you to create a gentle, conscious, and thoughtful day. Your morning is yours and should reflect not only your practical needs, but also the needs of your soul. When you center yourself at the start of your day, you will likely find it easier to remain centered during subsequent work, play, and downtime, because the overall sense of serenity you create through your choices will stay with you throughout the day.
This is important, Marlene. When you wake up in the morning, at least going back to my childhood, you wake up in the morning, you say a prayer, you're thankful for, sleeping soundly and waking up well rested in the morning, and you set a goal for yourself, not necessarily to try to achieve the world in a day, but to say, you know what, today I'll focus on the positive, or today I'll make sure that I'm extra loving to the persons who are around me that matter most, or whatever it is that you decide that will be your aim for the day. And it's a way of finding the center. Because once you're able to do that, then there is balance in how you go about doing your work, how you go about interacting with others, and how you go about making decisions. If you wake up and you're in a groggy mood and everything seems to be, annoying or what have you, then that guides the outcome of the day, right? So if you wake up on a positive note, being thankful and being able to say, you know what, today will be like no other day, and you treat it as such with that verve and that enthusiasm, then that kind of sets the tone, and you will see your headway. You will see whatever the successful outcome of it would be by day's end.
I think I can firmly say, with all the experience of early mornings, that this could not be more true. And I learned it very early. There is no point to getting up and just simply starting your day. You can't wake up and just get ready to go. You need that time in the morning to really help you to be able to set the pace and the tone for what you want. Half an hour, if you can, more I would suggest, at least an hour before you need to get started. And you can really see a huge difference. And what you do at that time is important. I know a lot of people are tempted as soon as they wake up to jump on social media and start scrolling, or you dive right into work and start reading emails. But really, it's such a good time for you to kind of bring yourself back to center. And that sounds really like airy-fairy, but you can do it through exercise. If you go out and I love walking early morning. I think it's just a quiet, peaceful time. Or just going outside and enjoying like the natural air. It could be any other thing that you feel will put you in the right mood to get your day started. But there is a huge difference between having a start of your day like that versus jumping right into it and you never quite get your bearings.
Well, it can be as simple as sitting in silence, right? Reflecting or meditating, right? It clears the mind and it prepares you mentally for whatever challenges you may face in a day. And once you're able to clear that mental space, then there's room for better decision making.
Absolutely, absolutely. So, I think if you've never tried it, if you've never realized it for yourself, and if you feel like you're having crazy days, that you're all over the place, you just can't get things settled very early, try this and you will see that it makes a difference, especially if you have kids, because once they're up, your mom or dad duties are on, and there's nothing else you can do after that.
Trust me, I would know.
Yeah, right? So take that space for you and do with it what makes you feel best. All right. So that is our eye-opener for this morning. And, of course, it is a Monday morning. Welcome back. You're off your vacation time.
Yes. And there's a lot that you, the viewers, need to catch up with, and there's still a lot that I need to catch up with as well. So we have a couple of stuff that we're going to get into, but let's formally begin the Eye on the News this morning. So, on Friday night, and for those who woke up to the news on Saturday morning, because this was an incident that happened in the evening on Friday, and this was off the coast of Placencia, where a retired Austrian national, Christian Gussenhaver, 46 years old, made a distress call essentially, and police responded to an island 6 miles off the coast of Placencia, where they found him with a single gunshot injury. He was suffering from an injury having been shot by persons who perpetrated a home invasion, or an aggravated burglary, as we would formally call it, where Mr. Gussenhaven was locked in his bedroom to try to avoid these individuals who came firing shots at his property. They managed to breach the door and get into the house and demanded money from him. Now, he surrendered an undisclosed sum of money, And in the process, one of the 4 persons who raided the home ended up shooting him. So we had a news team down in Placencia over the weekend. This would have been on Saturday morning. And we have a brief interview with someone who shared with us what transpired.
I phoned the police station to ask if we can get out to the island. It was a little difficult to get everybody together, but we had a few people on standby. My colleague Kimberly helped to get all of the boats together. At the end of the day, our friends from Vision Properties, they got their boat here the quickest, and Ms. Ramclam from the police department down here gave us the go-ahead to take the police officers out to the island, and we were there within 45 minutes. It was not a good scene to walk into. Obviously, the biggest thing that we needed to do is secure and find him to see if he's okay or if he's alive, because we've been on the boat and not been corresponding with him. And then we found him in his bedroom. So the entire village got together on that, and Dr. Alexis, our private doctor down here, he is the one that brought the ambulance down. And while we were out on the island with the boat, everybody knew that we were coming back with him. So they got the ambulance together so that we can take him to the city when he gets back.
All right, so Mr. Gussenhaven remains hospitalized in a critical state. What we know so far is that the vessel, which belongs to the shooting victim, has been recovered. The engine, however, is missing, right? And so an investigation into this matter is ongoing. The effect of this kind of crime, Marlene, and the fact that as a one, tourist destination, and 2, as a country where we have a lot of expats who come and retire to Belize, this is a black eye that we would resort to this kind of crime and violence situation, right? And what it means to persons who are on the outside looking at Belize. So I think that's the first thing that I wanted to touch on.
You know, I think the drama behind all of it and how it unfolded too was really, it really swept, I think, the wider community, not just Placencia community, with a blanket of fear. You know, first of all, Christian went to his Facebook to say that the incident has happened, that he was hiding in his room. He thought his dog was dead. You know, dog lovers, we understand that one. And just the sheer fear that you felt that perhaps, you know, people wouldn't get there in time, and having it all unfold on social media. We're so thankful that this morning he is in the hospital and on the road to recovery. But this is really one incident, what seems to be a situation that has been happening for some time. I think you recall a few weeks ago, there was an update from the Coast Guard and from the Fisheries Department that there had been increased instances of piracy. We call it piracy, you know, robbery on the seas, in the South especially. And so it seems to have moved from just intercepting a boat and attempting a robbery there to now going on. And there are a number of islands like this where they're private properties, where they're small resorts or research centers. And now it seems that they're going onto land as well. I can't say that they're connected, but there's similar instances that have happened in that area of recent. And I question now what will be the response to see how they will be able to get it under control. It's tough to police the seas. Let's be honest there.
It's an expansive area where you have keys dotting all of the south or most of the south. So it's difficult to see where they're going to hit next and what the objective is. So like you said, Marlene, the response from the Belize Coast Guard is going to be an interesting one. Similarly, the Belize Police Department, its officers have to be summoned out to the scenes of these crimes, and so they too are part of the overall response to this kind of crime happening out on the seas. Right? So that's the first one. Secondly, there was a tragic road accident along the coastal road, which is being constructed as we speak, where several persons lost their lives. This is particularly sad, Marlene, because you have families that were caught as victims in this traffic accident. Speaking from a somewhat personal point of view here, there was a little child who is hospitalized who was a victim in this incident as well. And I can only imagine the trauma of being caught in an accident where you're seeing persons lose their lives in front of you. It goes back, however, to the issue of road safety, and I can't stress this enough, because oftentimes we're on the highways, we're on certain feeder roads or wherever we're traveling, and we seem not to take into consideration the fact that one has to, as a motorist, exercise the highest degree of attention to speeding, attention to oncoming traffic, and all these other factors that come to play in terms of your commute, so to speak. And the fact that I understand there were other visitors to the country who were also caught in this accident, it reminds me of the tragic incident as well that happened a couple weeks ago, where the young lady from Roaring Creek lost her life on the Dangriga Road, the Stan Creek Road, where speeding may have been a factor in all of it. And so that's the other thing that I wanted to touch on. And so we extend our condolences to the family of those individuals who were affected by this fatal RTA.
Yeah, it was two people. 18-year-old young lady lost her life. She was pregnant, so that's a loss of 2 lives there. And of course, a child also lost their life. And so I think that it's one of those things where we don't have all the details as to how the accident occurred as yet. So far, all the police have been so far all the police has reported is that the van was found flipped upside down. So whether there was a mechanical problem, a blowout, or an avoidance of an accident, or a crash, I should say, we don't have all those details, but the driver will be able to fill in some of that. But it really is such a sad scenario, and we'll get more details today to see how this happened and what will be the lesson we learn from it.
And so the final point for this morning's Eye on the News is the fact that Belize Telemedia Limited held its first virtual AGM over the weekend, and this is under a new board of directors. We know that BTL is now being chaired by former Senator Mark Lizarraga, and of course this is in the wake of the Net Vasquez scenario. And so I believe that special focus was spent on the fiscal performance of the company over the past year, and where the company stands in terms of its finances, in terms of its profitability and operations and what have you, right? This was, like I said, done virtually. And so there's a lot we'll be able to catch up on there. I wasn't personally able to follow all the details of what transpired, but certainly we will be able to speak with the chairman a little later on in the day or at his earliest convenience to get some of the points from him as to, what were the main considerations, what is the way forward for BTL. I know that we've been reporting since last year that the company was in a sort of iffy financial situation. I don't know if they're still facing those headwinds or if there's clearer or calmer waters in the months ahead. Once again, we're in the COVID pandemic, and so perhaps that also has its own impact on the company's bottom line and performance.
Yeah, absolutely. Right. And so we're going to see more of that in the newscast tonight. And of course, at the end of last week, the People's United Party completed 100 days in office.
Yes.
As the new administration, and so there's some assessment to be done there. We know they're putting out their own release to talk about what they have accomplished, but it is interesting to look back to see some of the first decisions that were made. Definitely, they've had some low moments with losing their Corozal Bay representative. And having now to face a by-election next week along with the municipal elections.
There's a lot happening in terms of politics. March 3rd is quickly coming up on us. But like you said, before that is the by-election in Corozal Bay, where we have candidates from both parties who are vying to fill that seat in the House of Representatives. Yeah. Right, so these stories and more certainly will be aired, or we'll go into more details of them this evening at 6 o'clock, either on News 5 Live, you can catch us, or streaming on Facebook as well.
All right, and with that, it's time for us to get moving into our show for today. And we are starting off with a conversation we know that many of us have been looking forward to, parents especially. We're going to be talking to the Minister of Education, Culture, Science, and Technology. So several issues to discuss. We're talking about what they are planning in terms of reopening of schools. We're talking about budget consultations, a lot to catch up on. And so that's going to be a two-part conversation.
Then our second conversation, which would be the final segment of our show, is to discuss the long-term effects after contracting COVID-19. And we'll also speak to our friends over at Caring Hands Clinic as they tell us everything we need to know about the long-term effects of the coronavirus.
All right. So with that, we're going to go ahead and take a break. But before we do, we got a birthday shout out. And today we are saying happy, happy birthday to
Asia Sanchez. There she is. Happy birthday, Asia.
All right. You have a great day today. Do enjoy. And that greeting comes from all of us here at Channel 5. And open your eyes. We're going to take that break now, and when we come back, we'll be joined by Minister Francis Fonseca to talk about education and several other topics. So please stay tuned.
It's a fact that you can access unlimited services with Smart. Tired of being measured or cut off when you need to be connected? It's a fact that when you sign up for Smart's Plus plan, you get unlimited talk, text, and unlimited data. And it's a fact that you can sign up with your group of up to 5 members for Smart's Share plans and up to 40 members for Smart's Enterprise plans for unlimited talk, text, and data. Smart has the true unlimited plans. That's a fact. Be smart and live smart.
As one of the largest cable and internet providers in Belize, CBC strives to provide our customers with the highest standards of quality, value, and service in all aspects of cable TV and internet. Monitoring our systems closely, our technicians combine creative planning and state-of-the-art technology with years of experience and training to develop and provide the most reliable and advanced cable and internet service to exceed your expectations. For CBC and our team of talented engineers, technicians, and customer service representatives, delivering less than the very best is never an option.
In these challenging times, the one thing that is certain is that the Belize Bank Limited is here for you. There is nothing more important than your health and safety, and we continue to make every effort to make banking safer for you. Our staff is working around the clock to make sure you can do your banking conveniently 24/7 using our mobile banking app and online banking and keeping ATMs up and running. We value your relationship with us and are here to provide the support you need. First responders are also out there 24/7. Thank you, healthcare workers, security forces, firefighters, caregivers. You are all appreciated. Stay safe. We will get through this together. The Belize Bank, our country, your bank.
Everyone is at risk of catching COVID-19, so it's important to quickly recognize signs and symptoms of the infection. The most common symptoms are fever, dry cough, and tiredness or fatigue. Some people may also have sore throat, aches and pains, stuffy nose, or diarrhea. But a few people have also reported pink eye or conjunctivitis, headache, loss of taste or smell, a rash on skin, or change in the color of fingers or toes. Emergency warning signs that require immediate medical attention are extreme difficulty breathing, severe constant pain or pressure in the chest, becoming confused, unable to talk or move, bluish lips, face, fingers, or toes. For more information, call 0800 MOHCARE. Help keep Belize safe.
Today's COVID update is brought to you by Fulltech Systems, your technology center, where you'll come for the price but stay for the service.
And welcome back. As we mentioned prior to the commercial break, our first conversation this morning will be with the Minister of Education, Culture, Science and Technology, the Honorable Francis Fonseca, where we'll be discussing the budget consultations. We'll also be discussing other points of interest in the Minister's portfolio as it relates to education and the reopening of schools. That being said, good morning, Minister Fonseca.
Hi, good morning, Marlene, and good morning, Isani. It's a great pleasure to, as always, it's a great pleasure to join you on Open Your Eyes this morning.
Let's begin with the budget consultations. I know that you guys have been making your rounds, meeting with various stakeholders to get their perspective and, of course, their feedback in terms of putting together what will be the fiscal budget for for 2021. Let's begin there. What has that been like in terms of being able to meet with the various interested parties?
Right. Yeah, you're exactly right, Isani. The cabinet appointed a team of ministers, which included myself, the Deputy Prime Minister, Cordell Hyde, and the Minister of the Public Service and Constitutional and Political Reform, Henry Charles Usher, to hold consultations with the unions on the budget for fiscal year 2021-22, but also to present to them a fiscal and economic performance review of fiscal year 2020-21. Because I think, as the nation now knows very clearly, we are faced with a very serious financial crisis coming out of fiscal year 2021, where we have a shortfall, a financing gap of close to $500 million. So in light of that context, and in preparation for the new budget, we had to sit down and talk with the unions because some tough decisions have to be made about how together we can work together to really solve that issue facing us, facing the country. How do we close that gap in an equitable way? So over the last 2 weeks or so, our team has met with the National Trade Union Congress of Belize, which, as you know, is the umbrella organization for the trade unions. We've met with the Public Service Union. We've met with the Belize National Teachers Union, of course. And we've also met with the Association of Public Service Senior Managers. Now, under the umbrella of the NTUCB, we also met with the Christian Workers Union, the UB Faculty and Staff Union, and the Belize Communication Workers Union. So we feel that we've had a very comprehensive discussion with all of the unions in Belize. And the objective really was, as I said, to meet with them, to share with them in a very frank, honest, and open way the state of the economy, the state of affairs, the state of financial affairs in our country. And to discuss with them how can we together develop a homegrown plan, an equitable homegrown plan, a sustainable, credible, practical homegrown plan for financial recovery, for economic recovery, because that is where we all want to go. No. So that conversation, I know everybody talks about the wage bill, and of course that is the elephant in the room, because the wage bill, as everyone knows, accounts for the great majority of government expenditure. I think as people have become very familiar now with the fact that I think 83 cents of every dollar that the government spends, that the government takes in, is spent on wages, bills, and pensions, the wage bill and pensions. So that's something we have to tackle. But I want to make very clear that our discussions with the unions were very comprehensive. We talked also about revenue enhancement measures. What can government do? What policies can we enact? What recommendations can you make for how we can enhance revenues? Keeping in mind that we are in a very delicate situation. The private sector is already heavily burdened. They themselves, in fact, have laid off a lot of people. So practical revenue enhancement measures, we had a discussion about that. We also talked about debt restructuring. The government is engaged in a comprehensive debt restructuring exercise. A debt management team is working on that. A dedicated debt management team is focused on that issue. How can we restructure the debt, particularly our external debt, to get a significant haircut, to provide breathing space, to provide breathing room for the Belizean economy so that we can recover. So debt restructuring was also a part of the discussion. We talked about capital projects. Sorry, go ahead.
I just wanted to ask the question before we move ahead too far. I think it's interesting when you say that the wage cuts is this elephant in the room. And I think that lends to the question very clearly, why wasn't there a preliminary discussion to explore with the unions their viewpoint and where there were opportunities for compromise before creating what would be your first proposal?
Oh no, absolutely. That's the point. Indeed, we did have as I said, a comprehensive discussion. The real question, Marlene, is why did this not take place a year ago? This really should have taken place a year ago, and any responsible government would have had this conversation with the public service. In fact, we saw the opposite. So there was no serious conversation. So immediately upon taking office after November 11th, we began that sort of discussion, but we had to, of course, you will understand and appreciate that we had to first get a proper handle on the fiscal situation ourselves. So we did a lot of work. The Ministry of Finance did a lot of work preparing for these consultations, making sure that in fact we had the correct figures. And in fact, I can tell you the Ministry of Finance had to do this exercise several times to make sure that in fact what we were presenting to the unions and to, as you know, there's a team as well meeting with the private sector and the NGO community, that in fact we were presenting real figures to them. So that took some time. But the purpose of the discussions, and certainly our consultations are ongoing. Our consultations are not done. Our consultations are ongoing. The initial consultation, the purpose was in fact to do that, to present to them the lay of the land. This is the fiscal and economic situation facing the country as we go into this new budget year. What are your recommendations? What would you like to see done? And that is why I'm talking about these different areas, because they had, of course, we had a discussion, as I said, about revenue enhancement measures. We had a discussion about debt restructuring. We had a discussion about capital projects. How can government streamline capital projects, for example?
Let me interject quickly here, Minister. I get the impression that this was all done or set against the backdrop of austerity and belt tightening, considering the present economic state of affairs. Is that so?
Yeah, absolutely, absolutely. I mean, the fiscal and economic review that we have presented, and I think it's been made public now, shows very clearly that we're faced with a dire financial situation. Yeah. I mean, we have, when you talk about unemployment and underemployment, we're talking about over 65% of the population being either unemployed, 30% unemployed, and another 35 to 38% being underemployed. That is absolutely significant. The debt to GDP ratio, I think Belizean people are becoming very familiar with these terms now, is around 134%, the highest debt to GDP ratio in the Caribbean and Central America. This is unsustainable, unsustainable. And if we do not fix this problem, if we do not address this problem, then we are headed down a very dangerous path where we are at risk of losing our fiscal sovereignty, abandoning our fiscal sovereignty to the IMF and the IFIs. And I don't think any Belizeans want us to travel down that road because you know what the result of that is.
Now, having discussed extensively with all of these social partners, what would you say would have been the primary concern or the collective issue that they all flagged in terms of either certain considerations that ought to be made by the government or certain sacrifices, if I may, that they should be making going into the new financial calendar?
Yeah, I mean, first of all, I want to make it abundantly clear that, you know, our team was very, very impressed with all of the unions that we met with, the public officers, the senior managers, the teachers, union representatives. You know, we firmly believe that they came to the table in absolute good faith. They're very sincere, in my view, in their commitment to working with the government to find a credible solution to the crisis we're facing. They're very aware of the crisis, particularly the public officers who are a part of the government service, and they have, you know, they see these things every day. They see these figures every day. So they want, I believe, to find a solution. They want to find a homegrown, equitable solution, but that is the key word for them, equitable. They believe if we're going to have a burden placed on the Belizean people, if you like, on public officers or teachers or other individuals, that burden should be equitable, that it should be shared in a very equitable manner. And of course, they are always concerned about waste. They're concerned about abuse. They're concerned about corruption. So those are critical issues for them. So they want to ensure that before we have a discussion about any burden being placed on public officers or teachers in terms of any wage issue, that we have exhausted every other option. As I said, that we have explored the issue of revenue enhancement measures, that we have looked at the debt and restructured it in a proper way, that we have streamlined our capital projects and put an end to these bloated public contracts, that we have looked very carefully at goods and services that the government provides and buys, and that in fact those have been slimmed down, trimmed down in an efficient manner, that there's no longer waste taking place. And then we can look at the issue of wages. So I think that's a very reasonable position that they've adopted.
Okay. And, when you talk about equitable, let's look into some of the concerns that people have when they talk about wage cuts. And I just want to get your perspective. I know there's no formal government position as yet. As we know, currently, ministers are being asked to take a 10% pay cut, which is an interesting precedent to set if you go into any consideration about wage cuts in the future with public service. But There's also the bigger concern of looking at whether or not it's seen to be a one-size-fits-all approach. In other words, you know, there are teachers who earn far less than others who work within the ministry. It's the same for public service. You have entry-level public servants versus senior management public service. Is there going to be, if we move in the direction of wage cuts at all, a real consideration for what is the reality for workers and what they have in their pocket already and what you'll be taking away?
Yeah, no, absolutely. I think we can all agree that one size fits all is not the appropriate approach to take in respect of any burden sharing. It has to be equitable, as you rightly said, and those who can most handle a cut would certainly, if that decision were taken, would be asked to take a greater share of that burden. And those at the lower end of the wage bill, at the wage pool, would certainly, we would have to, of course, appreciate their position, their economic position, the fragile state that they're in. So you're absolutely right. It cannot be one size fits all. And I think, as I said, that is very, very important to the unions. That has been brought up consistently as it relates to our discussions with them. But
what
sorry,
are
go
some
ahead.
of the responses coming from the unions on the issue of revenue collection and generation? What was their take on that?
Yeah, I think you know, the unions were, as I said, very sincere, and they recognized. I mean, they live in Belize. They have friends in the private sector who have been laid off. They see their family members who work in the tourism sector out of work for 10 months. So they understand, I think, and appreciate that the private sector is taking a licking. And they understand that, you know, 25% of the unemployment is made up of people who earn a living in the tourism sector. So they appreciate that, and they understand that many people have been laid off, and so I think they want a proper balance. They understand that, listen, the private sector is already being taxed heavily. They are already seeing significant losses in terms of revenue in the private sector because of the lockdowns that we have experienced. So their only request in that regard was, listen, let's look at everything. Let's look at where we can close loopholes, where there are concessions, you know, that type of thing, where duty exemptions were being made available. How can we look at those issues to ensure that there is no waste, there's no abuse? Those were two words that came up quite regularly. They, you know, and the unions were very open. You know, they're not political, they are for Belize. But they were very clear. Listen, we have had a decade of waste and abuse and corruption. And they feel very strongly about that. They believe that certainly COVID took us over the cliff, but what got us here was that waste and abuse and corruption. When we had an opportunity, when Belize had millions of dollars in Petrocarib funds, when we had oil revenues, hundreds of millions of dollars, when we had a budget every year of over $1 billion, we were not preparing for a rainy day, much less a rainy year. So, you know, they understand, and they don't want us to make those mistakes again. They don't want us to travel that road again. So those are their concerns. And as I said, I view them as being very sincere. And that's the approach we've taken in the consultations, to talk to them about how can we work together to ensure that we don't make those mistakes. Again, what can we put in place? We talked about specific amendments to the law. For example, they have a lot of concerns about what they call double dipping. You know, a lot of individuals who have retired from the public service but have been hired back on contracts. So double dipping. They want to put an end to that. amend the Pensions Act to put an end to that, because it does multiple things. One, these people are paid a lot of money, but also it demoralizes the younger public officers coming up who don't get these opportunities.
Yeah.
Allowances, you've heard this already, they want a review of all these allowances that are given across the board, telephone allowances, housing allowances, entertainment allowances. I think, you know, the government already in our last cabinet meeting took a decision to cut the allowances paid to, and the stipends, for want of a better word, paid to all board members by 50%.
Yeah. Not executives though, right? Just members.
No, not executives, right, board members. Outstanding taxes, this is an issue that has come up again. You know, there's some disagreement about the numbers, but there are outstanding taxes in terms of GST, business tax, income tax, property tax. These are all things that we have to address.
Yeah.
The government is committed to doing so.
And
but
still
as you know,
responding in a pandemic, of course, to the new needs as they emerge. Now, the question here is, Minister Fonseca, is that the administration, when going into election, knew a lot of what the financial situation is. Maybe not as bad. You wouldn't be able to quantify to 130,000+ deficit, but you knew that it was going to be a serious financial rebound that would have to be worked on. My question is, moving forward, as you put together your budget consultations, as you put together your budget, for the upcoming year, the Ministry of Education is one of the allocations that's the largest. I think it is the largest allocation each year. How do you plan wanting to deliver on all the things that you campaigned on, but also recognizing that there simply is no money?
Yeah, the Ministry of Education is the second largest after the Ministry of Finance, as you would appreciate. No, I mean, you make the point, Marlene, and it's a critically important point. Yes, we knew that the country was in crisis. The Belizean people knew that the country was in crisis. They voted to put an end to the government that they viewed on November 11th as being responsible for that crisis. So we appreciate that, but I don't think people fully appreciate the depth and magnitude of the crisis. And that is what we have been unveiling over the past, I think, 2 months in particular. I mean, as you all know, the former outgoing Prime Minister, I think, was, in a moment of candor, was very, very candid in one of his last press briefings, where he expressed, in my view, very casually, sympathy for those who came after him. As he put it, après moi le déluge, no? After me the floods. Very, very casually, in my view, and recklessly. But nevertheless, that is where we are. The Belizean people gave the government of the Prime Minister John Briceño a very strong mandate for change, a mandate for reform, and that is what we're committed to. But we can't start off our term with hiding the facts. We have to be very straight, very honest, very upfront with both the public officers, the teachers, the private sector, and the Belizean people. We have to be very straight with them about what we have found and explaining to them how do we work together to get out of this situation. So in terms of education, absolutely. Well, what is first important is that the entire cabinet, the Prime Minister, has always expressed the view that education is a priority, a national priority for the People's United Party government. So we can't cut corners when it comes to education. We have to be more efficient. We have to be more effective, but we can't cut corners. We cannot allow the education system to fall behind any more than it has already fallen behind.
So let me Let me use this quick opportunity, Minister, to ask you, since we're at the tail end of the first 100 days, to give us your assessment of the state of education and where your ministry proposes to go forward in the context of the COVID pandemic.
No, we're faced with a crisis, in my view, a crisis in education. I pointed this out before the election. I pointed it out when we presented our education plan Belize. We are faced with a very serious situation. And the COVID-19 pandemic, as it has done for so many sectors of our country, has exposed these very, very stark weaknesses in our education system. So the most vulnerable students in our country are the ones who are hurting the most, and that is of great concern to me. Our poorer students, or students in rural communities, they're the ones who are falling behind, or students who do not have the support that they need, the proper support, whether it's at home, whether it is because of a lack of technology, whether it is a lack of access to Wi-Fi, general support. They are the ones who are hurting the most. They're the ones who are suffering the most. So we have an absolute obligation and duty to fix this situation. So we're committed to doing that. We talk about moving forward. As you know, we've right away as we got into the Ministry of Education, our focus had to be on how do we begin the process of returning to the classroom, because this situation of remote learning cannot continue. It's unsustainable. It's not working for too many students. So yes, we have to do what we can to make it better while we're in that situation. But our focus has to be on how can we safely and responsibly open schools for face-to-face instruction. And that is what we've been about from day one. And we've appointed, as you all know, a COVID-19 education task force comprised of the major stakeholders in education to do just that, to come up with specific recommendations and guidelines for how we can open responsibly.
And before we go any further with that, because I know that's something that parents are eagerly sitting in front of their TV waiting to hear about, we're going to take a quick break, and when we come back, we're going to talk about what's the plan moving forward for the reopening of schools. So please stay tuned. Caused intense flooding overnight in the western and southern parts of the country.
Yeah?
Do we need to renew the insurance policy?
The insurance policy?
Were impassable.
Oh, let me check.
Renew your policies, file a claim, and even send us a message using RFNG online.
No, we're good. It says we're covered.
Okay, great.
It pays to get it right with RFNG Insurance, a road group company.
Why, Tony?
Boy, kid, what you going on, man?
I actually can see we can need to buy a stack of them plastic plates and cups for my grocery shop because I run low.
Boy, I stopped importing that thing since April 15th, you know. And I just ran out of the last batch, must have been like 3 weeks back, you know.
Man, do I usually have anything? What is going on?
Check this, right? Under the new law, we ban all single-use plastics, so that the cups, plates, forks, spoons, and knives, all of that. Since April 15th, can't import none of them. Starting January 15, 2021, you can't manufacture them. April 15, 2021, you can't sell them. And after July 14, 2021, if you get catch with any other thing, you will get fined.
Me never know this. I guess I have to make some changes then. I have to make the customers know that anything not available. Anyways, bro. Thanks, man.
No problem, man. Take care.
If we are only as strong as our families, businesses, institutions, and the communities that surround us, then by giving businesses the power to grow, entrepreneurs the ability to expand, and by giving our families the right to own something, the Belize Bank gives you the power to build a nation, our nation. We are stronger together. The Belize Bank, our country, your bank.
It's a fact that you can access unlimited services with Smart. Tired of being measured or cut off when you need to be connected? It's a fact that when you sign up for Smart's Plus plan, you get unlimited talk, text, and unlimited data. And it's a fact that you can sign up with your group of up to 5 members for Smart's Share plans and up to 40 members for Smart's Enterprise plans for unlimited talk, text, and data. Smart has the true unlimited plans. That's a fact. Be smart and live smart.
Technology is ubiquitous, and it's transforming how, when, and where we work. Fulltech Systems is placing award-winning devices in the hands of information workers, allowing them to work without compromise in a world without wires, to innovate, create, and to maximize productivity anytime, anywhere, satisfying the needs of the desk-centric remote and field worker and every other worker in between. We are providing the industry's best devices to businesses going through the process of digital transformation. Partner with us today to provide the solutions that will allow your employees to work effectively and efficiently to enhance your customers' experience. Fulltech Systems, your technology center, where you'll come for the price but stay for the service.
And we're back. And if you are just joining us, we are continuing with a conversation that we started with Minister Francis Fonseca. We spent quite a bit of time talking about the budget consultations. And now we move, Minister, into what is essentially your area of expertise at this time and talking about when schools will reopen and what that will look like.
Yeah, well, I think we all want to get back to school, Marlene, in a face-to-face way. As I was saying before the break, I think everyone wants that. You hear some people saying, "Oh, the teachers don't want that," but I can tell you, in my discussions with Belize National Teachers Union, they want it as much as anyone else. They miss their students. The teachers, I think, in absolute good faith, want to get back into the classroom. But like everybody else, they want to do it in a safe and responsible manner. That is our commitment. That is our commitment to the teachers. That is our commitment to the students. That is our commitment to our administrators. And that is our absolute commitment to the parents, that we will do this in a safe and responsible manner. We will at all times be guided by our public health officials. So that is critically important for everyone to understand. We want to take, of course, a phased approach to this because, as I pointed out, I think earlier, there are particular groups that are vulnerable, and I think that are being particularly disadvantaged. So we're looking very clearly at putting in place urgently models for special education students, for example, special needs students, for our IT vet students who need skills training, and they need to get back into their workshops and get their hands on their tools. We need to have a specific plan for getting them back into their classrooms. Agricultural students, the central farm at the University of Belize, for example, these students need to get back into the fields. They can't, obviously can't learn by remote. So they are that's critically important. We need to get them back. Our early childhood educators, our students or preschoolers, again, how can we safely and responsibly return them back into their classrooms? As you know, these young ones, these little ones, they thrive on interaction. They thrive on being around their fellow preschoolers. They thrive on being, stimulated by their teachers. You know, we're entering in a few days Child Stimulation Month. So we're talking about that. So that's a critically important area that we have to focus on.
Minister, you speak of a phased approach, but have you been able to come up with a timeline? Because I know that the new school year begins in August, September, and perhaps there are those who are anticipating that presumably by then they would be returning to the classrooms.
Yes, absolutely. Our timeline is for rolling out this phased approach between, I would say, between April and September, so that our objective would be that come September, everyone, our hope and objective is that everyone should be back in the classroom come September, the new school year. But we can't wait for September. We have to make sure that we are taking a phased approach to it. And that in fact, as I keep pointing out, that we are addressing these urgent situations that exist. Also, our seniors, high school seniors, they have specific needs in terms of exams and that they have to sit, certain things they have to prepare for. We have to have a plan for that, and that we are working on. Our standard 6 students. So we are very aware of the challenges. As I said, it's not an issue that the Ministry of Education can deal with alone. We have to be guided by the public health officials. And of course, at the end of the day, it is the cabinet that will make a final decision as to whether we can have a formal reopening of schools. But we are doing all the work. I want to assure the Belizean people, I want to assure our parents, or students, or teachers, or administrators that we are preparing, and we're doing it in consultation with them.
What I'm hearing from you, just to be clear, is that it's quite possible that at the start of the 3rd semester for some schools that we will actually see some face-to-face education resume?
Yes, it's possible. It's possible. And one of the things we're doing is we have received, for example, a number of proposals from specific schools saying, listen, we have a plan for reopening our school. Review the plan, look at our plan. And if we meet the criteria that you're looking for, then give us the go ahead. And so we have to be flexible. We have to be open to that. And we're prepared to do that. We're saying to schools, individual schools, if you can come up with a plan that meets our criteria, that provides a model for you to reopen safely and responsibly, that takes into consideration all of the concerns that we have, teachers have, administrators have, parents have, then let's look at it and let's try to reopen. So there's no, we're not saying, oh, again, we talked about one size fits all. We're not applying that policy. Where schools can demonstrate that they are ready, that they are prepared, and we are satisfied that they are ready and prepared, then we're prepared to give them the go ahead to open. But we have to make sure that we're doing that in consultation with all the relevant parties. That's why I make the point that the COVID Education Task Force has representation from Belize National Teachers Union. It has representation from parents. It has representation from mental health awareness groups. It has representation from students and the National Student Union of Belize. Because we want all those parties to be at the table, being a part of the discussion, so that we can develop a model for reopening schools. That's one based on our collective guidelines and recommendations.
Minister, I know one of the things that we don't discuss as often is looking at the education gap that existed before and what may exist now. Our children are looking at a year out of school, and as I'm sure we can all agree, there were some children who either attended a school that was better prepared for a transition of distance learning, and some who have not been able to get continuous or consistent learning opportunities over the past year. A reality is that you have schools that may reopen and children will be at different levels. What's the plan in being able to have that catch-up time? And also, how do you not build on the disparity? If you move to face-to-face reopening with, let's say, private schools who are already probably better financed to retrofit the spaces or to allow for a reopening on schedule, it'll be very different from a rural school that you spoke of where there are disadvantages, or in schools where the parents don't have the type of finances to invest in the school.
Yeah, that's a critically important point, Marlene. You're absolutely right. And we're doing a lot of work in that regard. During this period, a lot of assessment has been done of the online education, the remote learning that has taken place. There's a dedicated team in the Ministry of Education that's looking at this very issue that you're talking about. What lessons have we learned from this experience of remote learning, and what impact has it had? What impact in a data-driven way? What impact has it had on specific populations of students? You can't plan for education if you don't have the data, if you don't do the proper analysis and assessment. So it starts with analysis, it starts with assessment. We have done a lot of that, but there needs to be more done. Once we have that, then you can plan properly for how you move forward. How do you address this growing gap? As you rightly point out, certainly in my view, and I think in the view of many other Belizeans, education was already in crisis before COVID came along. Too many of our young people were not moving from primary school to secondary school. In terms of our results, in terms of national examinations, I think it was clear to many people that we were falling behind. The school enrollment, shockingly, the school enrollment was falling. So we were faced with serious problems. And as we pointed out earlier, the Belizean people are spending close to $300 million every year on education. And, it's become rhetoric now, but we're not getting value for money. We're not getting value for money. Though we have to address that issue, and we have to focus on three things, in my view: access, equity, and quality. First of all, students need to have access to education. If you don't have access, then nothing else will matter. So we have to make sure that our students in remote communities, in rural communities, have access to quality education. So access is critical. Equity, you talked about equity just now. Yes, we have to ensure that we are providing our students with an equitable education. So wherever they live in this country, they should have access to quality teachers. And that brings you to quality of education. How can we ensure that our teachers are properly qualified, that they are delivering quality education? How can we ensure that the curriculum is relevant to the needs, the development needs of our country? How can we make sure that we're not overburdening our young people with the curriculum we now have? And I can tell you, we've set up another team that's looking specifically at that issue. And Minister Dr. Louis Zavenet is particularly focused on that issue, holding discussions with our teams within the ministry at quads and on other areas to focus on the curriculum. How can we address that issue? So access, quality, equity are critical components of how we move forward in terms of education.
What about fulfilling the campaign promise? And if I could probe a bit further, you know, you went into the last election talking about free education for all. This is, of course, a very popular thing to say, but very difficult to roll out, and also may not necessarily meet objectives of what you talk about, equitable access, where someone can afford to go to school, money not spent on tuition is then spent on additional reinforcement. So let's put that into perspective, whether it's practical, and especially given the current situation, and whether it actually allows for equitable access for all.
Yeah, I think in terms of rolling out, as you know, it's a 5-year plan, so it's not going to be done in 3 months, and it's certainly not going to be done in 1 year. But we are taking steps to deliver on these specific commitments. I can tell you we have already, for example, the Ministry of Education developed our policy plan on a rural education fund, on a higher education fund. We're developing our policy paper on a teacher learning institute. So all of these things we're working on. Curriculum reform that I talked about earlier, the restructuring of the Ministry of Education, that is something we've spent a lot of time on as well. How can we make the Ministry of Education more efficient, more effective in the delivery of the services that we provide to the Belizean people? We talked, of course, we had to address on day one the COVID situation. How do we get back to school? That is our #1 objective. So we set up, as we committed to in our education plan, this COVID-19 education task force to do just that. So we are focused on those things and making sure, but of course it will have to be in a phased approach. So if we had in our education plan, for example, setting up a $3 million rural education fund, we will have to scale that down in year 1 and perhaps roll out $1 million rural education fund. And then as the economy recovers and the fiscal position improves, we can expand it to ensure that we are providing more funds for the rural communities. So I think that is critically important. In terms of, I think you raised the other issue. Maybe I'm missing the last point you made, Marlene.
The free, well, it's still free education,
yes,
and
correct.
ensuring that.
Correct. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think you know we've had that debate, and we feel very firm in our position and very comfortable in our position that this is a policy that is equitable. Education is a human right, and so we have to provide, and we're talking about preschool to sixth form. We have to provide education for people, and we think it is a necessary investment. When we talk about, you talk about inequity or people who can afford and so, but generally those people are putting, those people who can afford are putting back monies into the government coffers anyway, in terms of paying higher taxes. Perhaps they have more spending power, so they're putting more money back into the economy. So I think when you look at it on a whole, we believe that policy is absolutely achievable. We believe it's equitable. And it's, you know, you talked about, we've done, I mean, we did a lot of work on this. You know, even when the last time I was the Minister of Education, we had begun working on this issue. So we did a lot of work on this issue, and we believe even with our current budget for education, it can be achieved. It can be achieved with minimal, I think minimal increases. It can be achieved over a 5-year period, but it certainly is not something that we can achieve in this fiscal year, given the financial situation of the country.
Now, looking at and I'm glad you mentioned it. You know, you have been in charge of this portfolio before, and it's been you know, over a decade since you had left the ministry. What are some of the, and things have changed significantly in how children learn and what we know about how children learn, about even the priority areas for the country. Let's, for one moment, and I know it's something that we probably should never do, put the financial constraints aside and tell us what your vision is about being able to move what direction you want to move education in Belize.
Yeah, I mean, I wish we could have come into office with a robust economy and just hit the ground running, because we have so many plans for education, for culture, for science and technology. But if all else were equal, Marlene, Sani, you know, our focus, as you rightly said, has to be on the new models for education. At the forefront of that has to be technology. Our young people today learn in a different way. They are stimulated visually. So we need to create modern spaces for learning, spaces that stimulate young people's minds. So even the way, you know, I came into office and inherited a project to build schools across the country. Millions of dollars being spent on building schools. And I wish, you know, we would have had the opportunity to reshape that in a significant way. Because even school buildings have to look different. The inside, you know, it's no longer about blackboards and all these things. We need technology. We need technology in our classrooms. You know, young people, as my friend Yasser Musa likes to remind me, young people, for them, the internet and technology is like water. They need to be drinking it all day long. So technology has to be at the forefront of our education agenda. How do we make technology more available to our young people? How do we use technology to deliver education more effectively, more efficiently? And then, of course, IT vets, skills training, critically important. How do we make sure that, as I pointed out earlier, these are priority areas for me. How do we make sure our students are being equipped with the skills that they need to function in the Belizean economy, to get work, to find jobs, to provide, to create their own employment? Critically important in terms of IT vet. Special education, another passion for me. How do we make sure that these young people with special needs, that they are not left behind, that we equip them with the tools they need, the skills they need, the attitude, the values they need to properly function in our society independently, with dignity. Those are all critical areas for me. You know, and we could go on. Early childhood education.
And even, I know your portfolio includes science and technology. We didn't get to touch too much on it, but you noted that technology needs to be integrated in education. Some countries have moved towards introducing things like coding from a very young age, because that is part of the language of the future. But moving away from the receivers of the education plans to those who execute. The teachers have had, they're a very vocal union, and they have been very much, I would say, assertive in speaking about some of the challenges that they've had. We saw the challenges with the last administration. How do you view that relationship? It's clear that we can talk about qualification and certification, but it's also a challenge when you think of what teachers are asked to face with oversized classroom, under-resourced classrooms, and also having the management also as a part of the player in how education is rolled out.
Yeah, very important point, Marlene. And I think that's a very, you know, the teachers union, and I share that view. I think the last administration in the Ministry of Education was too focused on administrative control, too focused on teacher licenses. Yes, we need regulation, but our administration, our Ministry of Education will be focused on student learning, student outcomes, the learning outcomes of our students. That has to be our focus. And integrally tied to that is, of course, teachers. We won't have good student learning outcome if we don't have good quality teachers, and if our teachers are not put in a position where they can properly and effectively deliver education. So I really, I think we have an opportunity to walk a new path with the Belize National Teachers Union. I've met with them as Minister of Education. We've also met during the budget consultations. We will meet again very shortly. But I certainly have reached out to them and made it very clear to them that I want us to establish a new working partnership and relationship because we are in this together. We cannot succeed one without the other. We need to work together. The students of our country, the teachers of our country, the parents of our country are depending on us working together, having a shared common obligation and duty to quality education. Now, we won't always agree on every issue, but as I said, they can certainly depend on me not to make it personal. We will have differences of opinion on how we approach different problems and challenges in education, but I am absolutely committed to a working, respectful partnership with the Belize National Teachers Union, and indeed with all our other partners in education, particularly now as we are faced with this very serious crisis in education. How do we get back to school in a safe and responsible way?
We've heard kind of casually that there's a consideration for vaccinating teachers as a part of the early rollout. Was this a recommendation that you made, and what's your stance on this?
Yeah, absolutely. The recommendation came from above me, actually, and I, of course, fully supported and endorsed it. But the Prime Minister made it very clear in our last cabinet meeting where we discussed the phased rollout of the vaccine, COVID vaccine, that teachers should and would be included in phase 1 of that rollout. So we have about 6,000 teachers, and that is the objective, that as soon as we get our first batch of the vaccine, we're hoping that that will be sometime in March, and that thereafter, I think the ministry has said they will have a plan for rolling out the vaccine. We are very, very hopeful about that because that will assist us as well in terms of the safe reopening of schools. Yeah. With schools, of course, you have to appreciate, and I want people to understand this, that it's not just about the young people going to school. For the most part, we all know young people are not at great risk when it comes to COVID. Yeah. But we have a lot of teachers who have underlying conditions. Yeah. We have some elderly teachers, but also keep in mind that our young people and these teachers are going home. So it's not just something we can look at through the lens of our education system. We also have to look at it through the wider lens of our public health officials. Yeah. These people, teachers and students, are going back home. Many cases, as you all know, our young people live with grandparents. They live with guardians who are old. We have to be sensitive to that. We have to appreciate that. So these are decisions that have to be carefully made, responsibly made. Yeah. And I want the Belizean people to know that our government and the Ministry of Education is firmly committed to doing things responsibly and safely.
And before we close off our conversation, while we've been very focused on your individual portfolios, let's broaden the conversation and talk about your administration. And as you head into the presentation of the budget and the start of a new financial year, it's over 100 days in office. It's always a critical time how you hit the ground running. What's your assessment as to how the administration has done? If you were to grade yourself as Minister of Education, what grade would you give yourself?
Oh, no, we have a long way to go. Probably a Ministry of Education, probably a C. we have a long way to go.
To the entire administration?
No. I said the Ministry of Education. We have a long way to go. The people who work with me on a daily basis can tell you that I'm our harshest critic. I'm frustrated when I can't get things done. And every week I have my specific goals and objectives that I want to get done. And when those are not achieved, I am frustrated. So we have a long way to go. We're just getting started. In terms of the overall administration, I would say, I would say a B. We've come into office with unprecedented crises facing us in terms of the COVID pandemic, the floods that devastated many communities. It's a serious situation. I don't think any government has come into office since independence faced with such crises. But despite that, I am very optimistic. I'm very hopeful. I'm very proud to be a part of this cabinet. I think it's a very competent cabinet. People who I see their passion on a daily basis, their commitment to the country, their commitment to those they represent on a daily basis, in agriculture, in tourism, in rural development, and infrastructure. Despite the very harsh financial situation, I think the government is trying to prioritize the needs of the Belizean people. So I am very hopeful, and I am absolutely confident that this government will deliver for the Belizean people. It's been a rough start because of the economic situation, but we will get this right. We will fix the economy, and we will get back on track. And of course, it's frustrating when you can't, people can't get jobs. They've been, wanting and waiting and hoping for jobs. They can't get jobs. They can't get access to housing. Those are critical issues for them. But we do the best we can. And certainly in education, we try every day to provide support to needy families. That has to be our priority. And I think that's one lesson we have to learn of coming out of this crisis, is that we have to focus our attention on the needy and those who need most, and trying to make sure that they do not fall further behind. So I'm very hopeful, Marlene and Isani. I'm very hopeful, I'm very confident, I'm very optimistic about the future. But I think what we are asking the Belizean people is, listen, you came out in almost in unprecedented numbers on November 11th to support John Briceño and the People's United Party government. Your job was not finished on November 11th. We need your support more than ever now. We need you to walk this journey with us so that we can deliver for the Belizean people, so that we can deliver jobs. We can deliver land. The Minister of Lands, the Deputy Prime Minister, I think, is doing everything he can to get lands into the hands of those who need them most. First-time landowners, critically important. So we need to work together, and we need the support of the Belizean people. We've only been in office 3 months. We need you to walk with us on this journey. Your job was not done on November 11th. You need to walk with us, hold us accountable, but guide us and help us, support us to get this job done, because we are absolutely committed to getting it right and delivering for the Belizean people.
And with the mandate delivered on November 11th, how are you feeling about March 3rd, whether that's going to be a kind of grade that will be dished out to the administration as well?
Yeah, I think we feel very good about March 3rd. I think we feel, I think the Belizean people, for the most part, understand that we've only been in office 3 months. They understand the financial situation, crisis we're faced with. And they understand that, in many of these communities, for example, in Belize City, where I'm most familiar with, the mayor and his team in Belize City, I think despite, having no support from central government, the UDP central government from March of 2018 to November of 2020, managed to deliver the basic services for the Belizean people, did not terminate anybody from the office, from the city council. And there's an opportunity for them as we move forward and the economy improves over the next 3 years, for them to get more meaningful support from a PUP central government. So together, as they say, together we can. So we are committed to working with them. And we believe they deserve an opportunity to work with the PUP central government to deliver for the residents of Belize City. And that applies to municipalities across the country.
Yeah. Well, Honorable Fonseca, thank you very much for joining us this morning and being able to talk a bit about how the budget preparation and consultations are going and what the short-term and long-term plans are for education in Belize. Stay safe.
Sure. Thank you, Marlene. Thank you, Isani. My pleasure. I look forward to speaking with you all again. Stay safe.
With that, we are going to go ahead and take a break. When we come back, we're going to be talking, or we're going to try to get some more understanding as to what long-haul COVID is like, why people get these symptoms, what type of symptoms they're facing. That's coming up after the break. Please stay tuned.
This COVID update was brought to you by Fulltech Systems, your technology center, where you'll come for the price, but stay for the service. Technology is ubiquitous, and it's transforming how, when, and where we work. Fulltech Systems is placing award-winning devices in the hands of information workers, allowing them to work without compromise in a world without wires, to innovate, create, and to maximize productivity anytime, anywhere. Satisfying the needs of the desk-centric remote and field worker and every other worker in between. We are providing the industry's best devices to businesses going through the process of digital transformation. Partner with us today to provide the solutions that will allow your employees to work effectively and efficiently to enhance your customers' experience. Fulltech Systems, your technology center, where you'll come for the price, but stay for the service.
Love is a connection that should last forever. This February, NextGen is sharing the love with amazing promo deals for everyone. Reconnect or install with NextGen for free. Sign up for our affordable cable and high-speed internet plans and get 1 month free on your acquired service. But that's not all. New and reconnecting customers can now receive 1 month free MyTV subscription when you sign up with us anytime in February. Some restrictions apply. For more information on our promotions and services, contact us at 0800-222-5388 or via our social media platforms. NextGen, powered by Central TV and Internet.
Es un hecho que puedes obtener servicios ilimitados con Smart. ¿Cansado de que se corte la línea cuando más necesitas estar conectado? Es un hecho que cuando te suscribes al plan de Smart Plus, obtienes llamadas, textos y datos ilimitados. Y también es un hecho que te puedes suscribir con un grupo de 5 miembros al plan Smart Share y hasta 40 miembros al plan Smart Enterprise para llamadas, textos y datos ilimitados. Smart tiene los verdaderos planes ilimitados. Es un hecho. Sé Smart y vive de forma Smart.
Keeping safe from COVID-19 at your workplace requires 100% teamwork. You can keep earning while keeping yourself and others safe by doing some basic things. Wear a face mask at all times in the workplace unless you are alone in your own private space or office. Wash your hands frequently or utilize alcohol-based hand sanitizers and avoid touching your face. Disinfect surfaces like doorknobs, tables, desks, and handrails regularly. Increase ventilation by opening windows or adjusting air conditioning. Limit visitors and deliveries to the workplace and use appointments where possible. Attend meetings virtually as much as possible, and when not possible, hold meetings in open, well-ventilated spaces or rooms that allow for everyone to be 6 feet apart. Stay at home if you or a family member at home are feeling sick, or if you have been in contact with someone who tested positive for COVID-19. Keeping the workplace safe also requires that employees act responsibly when away from work. Practice social distancing and good hand-washing hygiene. Avoid large gatherings and avoid unnecessary exposure to others. Protecting others means protecting yourself. Together, we can defeat COVID.
In partnership with the British High Commission.
Everyone is at risk of catching COVID-19, so it's important to quickly recognize signs and symptoms of the infection. The most common symptoms are fever, dry cough, and tiredness or fatigue. Some people may also have sore throat, aches and pains, stuffy nose, or diarrhea. But a few people have also reported pink eye or conjunctivitis, headache, loss of taste or smell, a rash on skin, or change in the color of fingers or toes. Emergency warning signs that require immediate medical attention are extreme difficulty breathing, severe constant pain or pressure in the chest, becoming confused, unable to talk or move, bluish lips, face, fingers, or toes. For more information, call 0800 MOHCARE. Help keep Belize safe.
If we are only as strong as our families, businesses, institutions, and the communities that surround us, then by giving businesses the power to grow, entrepreneurs the ability to expand, and by giving our families the right to own something, the Belize Bank gives you the power to build a nation, our nation. We are stronger together. The Belize Bank, our country, your bank.
Welcome back. We're jumping into our final conversation of the morning. We have been joined virtually by Dr. Shauna Pott. She's from the Caring Hands Clinic, and she's joined as well by Carlos Manzanares. He's a quality analyst for Maya Island Air. And of course, we're going to be discussing the long-term effects after contracting COVID-19 and the work of Caring Hands Clinic. Good morning, guys.
Good morning. Good morning, Marlene. Good morning, Isani. Thank you for having us on the show.
All right, so long-term, the long-haul effects of COVID-19. Most of us were initially of the idea that, you know, you contract the illness, you deal with it, and perhaps after fully recovering that these symptoms won't be returning back. But now we're looking at a different scenario where you're faced with persons who are still suffering from the aftermath or the after effects of COVID, should I say. Let's begin there, Dr. Pott. What can you enlighten us in terms of what we're faced with?
Okay, so what you're talking about is post-COVID syndrome, which is actually something that is still being studied, you know, and it could be from mild, moderate to very severe in some cases. What the people most at risk for developing post-COVID syndrome are mostly, you know, what we've noticed or from that studies have shown is adults over the age of 50, people who had a very severe case of COVID-19, or patients who have underlying conditions such as diabetes, hypertension, cardiopulmonary disease and other underlying condition. But like I said, it's still something very new. What is mostly observed is the fatigue that may last for up to months after recovering from the virus itself. And in some cases, the shortness of breath. And like I said, in some cases, you have people that can go home, they're okay, but we've also seen cases where we've had to hospitalize patients a second time to receive oxygen therapy and other treatment.
Has that happened more than once? I'm always surprised by that. People who recover from COVID still have breathing problems, and then they end up back in the hospital?
Yes.
How many times have you seen that happen?
Well, for me, I've only seen it twice.
Okay.
Yeah.
Still surprising. Now, Dr. Pot.
One of the things that is noticed on the CAT scan is, some destruction to the alveoli in the lungs, and so, which is basically pulmonary fibrosis, and so it takes a while to recover from that.
Yeah. I mean, there's a long list of symptoms that some people are left with after recovering from COVID. Some people are left with after recovering from COVID. And it seems to be very much linked to the fact that COVID can affect many different parts of your body. Tell us about
it's multi-systemic.
Yeah.
So it just affects basically everything in some people.
So some of the common long-term effects that you're talking about, the fatigue too, and the memory. I've read stories about like brain fog, or they call it COVID brain.
Yeah, the brain fog. The fatigue is very common. That's one of the common complaints. Difficulty to sleep in some people, and just a wide variety of symptoms, and it varies in everybody. Just as COVID presents differently in everyone, the same way the post-COVID syndrome varies in everyone.
Yeah, interesting.
In different people. And some people just recover, and even though they were severely ill, they recover and they're fine to go.
Yeah.
So it's something, like I said, it's something that is new, and we don't know everything, and it's still being studied.
Yeah. Now let's shift to some of the things that you guys are doing at Caring Hands Clinic. This is basically a testing site that's been established, right?
Yes. So when the CDC requirement came about on the 26th of January, Maya saw the need to respond on behalf of their visiting tourists and traveling public. And so they reached out to me with the interest to open testing facilities so that they could, their locations are convenient and readily available to serve the public.
Yeah.
And of course the tourists. We're trying to recover tourism in the most safe manner possible. And so as this requirement came about, they saw the need, and it was an opportunity to assist.
Yeah. Now it's rapid testing that's available?
We do both rapid testing and PCR.
And what's it been like since you opened, a bit over a month ago?
It's been a very positive experience. We've had great feedback, and we've definitely seen the need from the hotels, the travelers, tourists, and the general public, Belizeans who need to travel. We've had people from Atlantic Bank, BWS. We've responded to emergencies from them, and just private patients, a host of well-known hotels.
Yeah.
But it's been a positive experience, a great experience for us so far.
And Carl, let's talk to us. You know, there are 4 different sites. How do you ensure the quality control, since you are the quality analyst?
Hey, good morning. I'm representing my island here this morning. This morning, sorry. It's been an interesting experience since March. I think it was March 10th from last year. My island here started to develop and implement a biosecurity protocol. Dr. Ashana mentioned before, nobody was an expert in COVID-19. In my take the initiative to start and implement a strong protocol in our facilities. But after a while, we were doing the things good in the new requirement for the travelers to come with a test. With a test, right? We saw the opportunity of this partnership with Caring Hands. Basically, Caring Hands, let's say, came under the umbrella that the biosecurity protocol has implemented so far. With this partnership, what we are offering or offer to the customers is that we come around, let's say, and they don't have to go to another place to get tested. In my facilities, they can do everything at once.
Yeah. So,
we're monitoring.
Yeah. Let me just jump in there, because the connection is very bad, and I'm sure people aren't able to understand you clearly. So while we get that sorted, Dr. Pott, you can tell us a bit about the tests that are offered and the turnaround time.
Okay. Well, it's very quick, simple, and easy. Like I've said, we use Abbott kits that are FDA approved. So, but within the time that people come in, we get their information, take all the necessary information. Yeah. They're swabbed. The kits are being run. I would say the turnaround time is less than half an hour. Yeah. So it's really fast.
This is primarily for visitors entering or exiting the country. Is there anything available? I noticed that that particular office is in San Pedro as well. Is there anything available there for residents of the island?
We have offices in San Pedro, Belize City, Placencia, Dambriga, and we're opening in Hopkins this week.
Wow.
Okay. And there's difference in prices for tourists and for Belizeans?
The standard price is $75 US or 150 Belize. We do have some promotions running at the moment. For example, in Belize City, I believe up until the 28th of this month, we have a promotion running for $100 Belize for testing. And then in Placencia, we have another promotion running for $65 US on site. We have our facilities. We would like to encourage people to be tested at the facilities. But we're not closed off to testing on site at hotels or wherever it may be needed.
Okay. All right. And Carlos, you still there with us? Let's see if we have a better connection.
Come on.
Yeah.
Can you hear me better now?
No, it seems that it's not clear enough for us to understand you. But we do appreciate you. I heard a bit of what you're saying in being able to recognize that this was a critical part in getting business restarted and ensuring for your customers that you'd be able to have them fly safely. Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay. Well, with that though, we are going to say thank you for joining us and telling us all about what's been happening at Caring Hands Clinic. And of course, Dr. Pott, we do appreciate you helping us understand just a bit more about the long-term effects of COVID and some of the things that you've been seeing. Best of luck and stay safe.
Thank you. Thank you very much, Marlene.
All right. And with that,
we go to our final commercial break, and when we return, it's to wrap up our show for this morning, Marlene?
If we are only as strong as our families, businesses, institutions, and the communities that surround us, then by giving businesses the power to grow, entrepreneurs the ability to expand, and by giving our families the right to own something, the Belize Bank gives you the power to build a nation, our nation. We are stronger together. The Belize Bank. Our country. Your bank.
Everyone is at risk of catching COVID-19, so it's important to quickly recognize signs and symptoms of the infection. The most common symptoms are fever, dry cough, and tiredness or fatigue. Some people may also have sore throat, aches and pains, stuffy nose, or diarrhea. But a few people have also reported pink eye or conjunctivitis, headache, loss of taste or smell, a rash on skin, or change in the color of fingers or toes. Emergency warning signs that require immediate medical attention are extreme difficulty breathing, severe constant pain or pressure in the chest, becoming confused, unable to talk or move, bluish lips, face, fingers, or toes. For more information, call 0800 MOHCARE. Help keep Belize safe.
It's a fact that you can access unlimited services with Smart. Tired of being measured or cut off when you need to be connected? It's a fact that when you sign up for Smart's Plus plan, you get unlimited talk, text, and unlimited data. And it's a fact that you can sign up with your group of up to 5 members for Smart's Share plans and up to 40 members for Smart's Enterprise plans for unlimited talk, text, and data. Smart has the true unlimited plans. That's a fact. Be smart and live smart.
And we're back.
This morning's conversation with the Minister of Education, I think, was particularly interesting for me because not only did it speak to the pending rollout of the back to school campaign, if I may. And I say back to school campaign because there will be phases in which students will be allowed to return to the classrooms for the beginning of the 2021 academic year.
Yeah.
And to listen to what the plans are in terms of this robust approach. We're dealing with a pandemic, we're dealing with several moving parts. We're not even discussing the idea of vaccinations for students and teachers at this point. It's just for the ministry itself to be able to prepare for a return to the classrooms. Listening to him describe what will take place and what their vision is, I think should be comforting to parents because kids have been out of school for almost a year now.
Yeah.
They've been doing virtual classes and stuff like that, but there's no true way of measuring the effectiveness of it. So now we have to move to the other phase, which is to get them back in classroom to have actual contact hours with the teachers so that we can now properly assess their progress in school.
Yeah, I do look forward to hearing more from the task force as well with the physical rollout and the plans there. This situation of children at school is a necessary one. It's one of these necessary evils that we're facing with COVID and adjusting to the times. But I don't think anyone is sitting back not noticing that there are going to be challenges in getting this ball rolling again.
Definitely.
So in looking at what the short-term face-to-face or reopening of school looks like, if they're going to do pilot projects. I think that's great to hear. And the eventual goal being a September reopening, that's all very promising, but it's not going to be business as usual.
Yeah.
It is going to be, there's several things I think come to mind. One, we know the unemployment and the economic situation, and that's not just something you talk about with the wider public. The wider public have children. They're going to have children going back to school and may not be able to afford a lot of the things that are necessary to go back to school. So I think that's a huge part of looking at returning to face-to-face. Secondly, we don't know what circumstances they were living in at home, whether they were taking care of the children, facing really challenging times, just kind of the emotional part of it as well, what it will be like for them to go back into school. And the third part is teacher support. You know, if you, you know, your dad's a teacher, so I'm sure you know, it's usually a very critical time after summer and after vacation time, where you have to reorient children back to a structured system. And so you're talking a year of some of them may have had some structure in their education process, and many probably didn't. You know, they do homework at night when parents come home from work, or they do it on their own schedule. So what is the type of teacher support that will be put in place there? There are lots of questions, and you know, I think we can't get them answered today, but it really is interesting to hear some of the thoughts that they have, that the minister presented this morning.
I think what struck me in the conversation with the minister is the idea of students who are pursuing vocational studies and those who are doing agriculture, for instance, right? They need to get back into their respective environments because that's hands-on learning. There's only so much theory that one would be able to learn remotely, but you would need people actually in the fields with their crops. You would need young mechanics under their vehicles studying the actual parts of the vehicle and that sort of stuff. And let's face it, being in a virtual space is very limiting to that kind of vocational studies. So I think listening to what was being put together and what is being proposed, I think is very important.
Yeah. Well, I do hope, you know, that there are lots of ideas. I think we all have ideas when we pay attention. I think IT vets are absolutely critical, but maybe we need to think of how you introduce technology there. Because that is, we're fooling ourselves if we're thinking that these aren't necessary skills for children. But ideally, the conversation this morning is to talk about where they are now, where they plan to go. Budget constraints will be a challenge moving forward. And I think we're all waiting to hear what will actually be proposed, whether there will be a wage cut, won't be a wage cut, or how they will move forward from there. So we appreciate the minister stopping in this morning to talk about all these topics.
Yeah. And of course, the work that Caring Hands Clinic continues to do with respect to testing for COVID-19. And as they mentioned, they have 4 different locations across the country. And if you're feeling as if though you need to be tested, if you're returning back to the States or wherever you're from, then you have that to access. Right?
Absolutely. All right, well, that's all the time we have for today. If you'd like to contact us, send us an email at oye@channel5belize.com. You can also find us on Facebook at Open Your Eyes BZ and on Instagram at OYEBelize. And remember to tune in tomorrow morning at 6:30 when you open your eyes.
To start your morning right.
Until then, keep your eyes, your mind,
and your hearts open.
We'll see you soon. Enjoy your day, Belize.
Open Your Eyes was brought to you by the Belize Bank, Our country, your bank.